The Phoenix hinge is a lightweight, durable, and versatile component used in elbow splints. This videotape demonstrates the fabrication of 3 different splint designs. First, the Phoenix hinge used with thermoplastic humeral and forearm cuffs. Another with humeral cuff and a circumferential wrist splint. A third with 2 hinges used with a humeral cuff and ulnar gutter wrist splint. 2 stops which are secured by set screws are provided and may be used when static or serial static splinting is indicated. The stops may be used to limit the motion in both directions. Or in only one direction, for example, to block elbow extension. Or to block elbow flexion. The stops can be removed for full elbow flexion and extension while the forearm is held in supination. The hinge itself has a high-quality ball-bearing joint which gives negligible resistance to motion. The hinge is available in 3 sizes: 3-inch, 4 1/2 inches, and 6 inches. Thumb nuts are provided for attaching the hinge to the thermoplastic, as well as a hex key for adjusting the motion stops. Materials needed but not included are tube stockinette, thermoplastic, and strap materials. Adhesive-backed foam padding is used over the distal ulna when a wrist gauntlet or ulnar wrist splint is made. Paper, tape measure, and wax pencil are used in making the splint patterns. Tools and equipment needed are a heat source for simmering water and a net for lifting the thermoplastic, heat gun, scissors, and a punch or drill. 1/16 inch thermoplastic is used in this splint to allow circumferential fitting. The 1/16 inch material will spring open for putting the splint on and off. A circumferential design distributes skin pressure so that the splint is more comfortable to wear. The first step in constructing the splint is to measure the patient's arm. The length of the humeral cuff is determined by measuring from 2 to 3 inches distal to the axilla to 1 to 2 inches proximal to the elbow flexion crease. The circumference of the upper arm is measured at the same points to determine the width of the cuff. About 1/2 inch is added to the circumference measures so that the edges of the splint will overlap. A paper pattern is cut first. The pattern is checked and adjusted as necessary, then traced onto the thermoplastic using a wax pencil. This portion of the splint is cut out with smooth, round corners. The thermoplastic may be warmed briefly for cutting, but the 1/16 inch material can be cut without warming. Care is taken to eliminate rough edges. Tube stockinette is placed over the arm. The thermoplastic is heated, thoroughly dried, and wrapped gently around the arm so that the edges overlap and lightly adhere to each other. Note that the material is placed, not pressed, to lightly adhere to itself. When it's cool, it will easily pop apart for removal. The proximal and distal edges are flared for comfort. And Velcro fasteners are added while the thermoplastic is still warm. The length of the forearm cuff equals the measure from 1 to 2 inches distal to the flexion crease at the elbow to 2 to 3 inches proximal to the distal ulna. The circumference of the forearm is measured at each point to determine the width of the cuff. Again, about 1/2 inch is added to the width so that the edges of the splint will overlap.